All right, so are you ready to dive deep into some seriously powerful persuasion techniques today? Think conversational hypnosis, but for everyday life. Stuff that we can actually use.
Yeah, absolutely.
You sent over some really interesting material about building trust, understanding how customers think, and basically you know how to become a master persuader.
Yeah, indeed, we're going to be looking at techniques used by top salespeople, but also um, delve into the methods of some renowned psychologists like Dr. Milton Erickson.
I love it. And the best part is, our listeners can actually use this stuff. Like we're talking about mirroring the subtle art of taking the sale away, even crafting stories that sell. This is gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe a good place to start would be with pacing, the foundation of building trust. So imagine you're Neil Campbell, a top Porsche Audi salesman. You've got a potential buyer on the lot. How do you approach them?
Hmm. Okay. Well, if I were Neil, I'd probably keep it simple. You know, maybe comment on something undeniably true, like beautiful afternoon to be looking at cars, isn't it? It's not exactly groundbreaking, but it's a shared reality.
Exactly. And that's pacing in action. By
Hmm.
stating the obvious things the prospect can't help but agree with you, instantly create that sense of common ground. You're not challenging them, you're aligning with them and building that initial trust.
So it's about subtly letting them know that you're on the same wavelength, which makes them more open to what you have to say next.
Okay, I get that. But how far can you take this mirroring thing?
Yeah.
Is it just, physical actions and simple observations?
It goes much deeper than that. It can even extend to pacing opinions and beliefs. So think about Dr. Milton Erickson. He was a master of this technique. He once treated a young woman who was convinced she was ugly. Now, instead of directly contradicting her, he initially acknowledged her feelings, effectively mirroring her belief system. Wow, that's fascinating. So by meeting her where she was, mentally and emotionally, he built enough trust to eventually guide her towards a new self-perception. Pretty powerful stuff. But what happens when you hit a roadblock? Like a customer objection. How do you handle that?
Well, that's where mental judo comes into play. Instead of avoiding the objection, you disarm it by addressing it head on. Let's say you're a life insurance salesman. A common objection is, insurance is a terrible investment.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Would you really agree with them?
You could say something like, you know what, you're absolutely right. Insurance is a terrible investment, but it's not an investment. It's protection for your loved ones.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you acknowledge their concern, which instantly diffuses the tension, and then you pivot to reframe the conversation. So it's about turning the objection's energy against itself, almost like a judo master redirecting their opponent's force.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
But it's not just about what you say, it's also about how you say it. Certain words carry more weight, and master persuaders know how to use them strategically.
Okay, let's talk about the power of words. Our sources mention these hot words, words designed to trigger specific emotions. What's that all about?
Okay, well, think about the difference between saying baby and child. Baby evokes a much stronger emotional response, right? It's more intimate, more personal. Sales superstars are masters at weaving these hot words into their conversations to guide the emotional tone of the interaction.
It's like choosing the right spices to create the perfect flavor profile for your message. And then there are words that act like attention grabbers, words like now and here that refocus the customer's attention.
Absolutely. They bring the customer back to the present moment and emphasize the importance of what's being said.
Now, this next technique is a bit mind-boggling, taking the sale away. So this is where you suggest the product might not be right for the customer.
Right, and it seems counterintuitive, but it often prompts them to sell themselves and why they need it. It plays on our natural resistance to being told what to do. Imagine a computer salesman saying, "This computer's probably more than you need."
I can see how that would backfire spectacularly if done poorly.
The key is to do it subtly and strategically. Done right, it can make the customer think, wait a minute, maybe I do need this.
All right, so far we've covered pacing mental judo and some seriously persuasive word choices. But what about the bigger picture? How do stories fit into all of this?
Well, stories are more than just entertainment. They're powerful tools for persuasion. They bypass our logical defenses and tap into our emotions, allowing us to make sense of complex information and remember key points.
So instead of overwhelming a customer with features and benefits, a good story can bring those same points to life in a way that's both memorable and relatable. Makes sense.
Think about Jim Sweeney, a successful entrepreneur. He uses a powerful metaphor to motivate his team, comparing building a business to constructing a skyscraper. He emphasizes the importance of laying a strong foundation and the long-term effort required.
It's not about sugarcoating the hard work. It's about framing it in a way that's inspiring and gives a sense of purpose. I like it.
Exactly, and it's not just about motivating teams. Dr. Erickson once helped a young boy overcome bedwetting, using a story about a baseball player needing precise muscle control. Without directly addressing the issue, the story planted the idea that the boy could achieve similar control over his bladder.
That's amazing. It's almost like speaking directly to the subconscious mind.
That's precisely. Stories can be incredibly powerful tools for indirect suggestion.
Okay, we've talked about pacing, using the right words, and the power of storytelling. Is there a specific framework for crafting these persuasive narratives, or is it more of an art than a science? So, we've covered all these powerful techniques for persuasion, but it also kind of makes you think about how they're used. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right to point that out. It's a bit of a paradox. These techniques can be used to sell anything, right, from cars to ideas, but they also have the potential to be misused.
Exactly. It's like having a powerful tool. You can use it to build something great, or you can use it to, cause harm. It all comes down to intention.
Precisely. Are you genuinely trying to help someone make a decision that's in their best interest? Or are you just trying to get them to say yes, regardless of, their actual needs?
That makes sense. So how do we make sure we're using these techniques ethically? Like, let's go back to pacing. If you're just mimicking someone's behavior without genuinely understanding them, that becomes manipulative.
Right. True pacing requires empathy, that ability to step into their shoes and see the world from their perspective. You're not just parroting back what they say, you're actively listening and reflecting on what's driving their words and actions.
So it's about connecting on a deeper level, understanding their motivations, and building genuine rapport.
Got it. Okay, so what about storytelling? How can we ensure we're using stories ethically to persuade?
Well, the most effective sales stories are those that resonate with the customer's values and experiences, helping them see how your product or service can genuinely improve their lives. If you're just telling stories to entertain or distract, you're missing the point. Right, so it's about finding those authentic connections between your story and the listener's needs and desires. And, our sources mention how people tend to mold stories to fit their own experiences. Even if you're telling the same story, each person kind of creates their own unique interpretation.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of storytelling. It's not a one-way transmission of information. It's a collaborative process where the listener becomes an active participant, creating meaning and drawing connections that are personally relevant to them.
That makes a lot of sense. So to use storytelling effectively, we need to leave room for the customer to kind of co-create the narrative, to find their own meaning in the story.
Exactly. And that's where the ethical considerations come in. Are you leaving that space for genuine co-creation, or are you trying to control the entire narrative and manipulate the outcome?
It's a delicate balance for sure. But ultimately, I think the takeaway here is that these persuasion techniques are incredibly powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. It's up to each of us to use these tools ethically and responsibly, always prioritizing the well-being of our customers and clients.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and dive deeper into the art of storytelling. We've talked about those different types of sales stories, but what are the key elements that make a story truly captivating and persuasive? So we've talked about those different types of sales stories, but is there a secret sauce? What makes a story truly captivating and persuasive?
Well, one key ingredient is authenticity. The best stories are rooted in truth. Even if there's a bit of dramatic flair added in, they resonate because they tap into real human experiences and emotions.
Yeah, it's like that saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. A good story reveals the why behind a product or service. It makes a much deeper connection with the customer.
Right. Think about that machine shop owner who was hesitant to buy life insurance. The salesman who finally closed the deal didn't just focus on policies and premiums. He told stories that resonated with the shop owner's values. His appreciation for quality tools, his pride in driving a Cadillac.
By linking those values to the value of a quality life insurance policy, the salesman totally reframed the conversation and overcame the owner's resistance. That's pretty clever.
Yeah, and another crucial aspect is structure. A good story has a clear beginning, middle, and end. It takes the listener on a journey building towards a resolution.
Like a narrative arc, with moments of tension and release that keep the audience hooked and wanting to know what happens next.
Right, remember that stockbroker's airport analogy? It starts with a relatable scenario choosing between flights. Then there's the tension of making a decision and potentially missing out. And finally, the resolution casts at it. the need to take action before it's too late.
That structure really makes the message much more impactful. It's not just a random thought. It's a story with a clear takeaway that encourages action. But a good story also needs to be engaging, right?
Oh, absolutely. You need vivid language, sensory details, and emotional appeals to draw the listener in and make them feel like they're experiencing the story firsthand.
So it's like you're painting a picture with words, creating a world that the customer can step into and really experience.
Exactly. Think about Jim Sweeney's skyscraper metaphor again.
Hmm.
He didn't just say building a business is hard work. He described the process laying the foundation. The grit and determination involved the feeling of accomplishment as the building takes shape. Those sensory details make the story come to life.
So to recap, a good sales story is authentic, well-structured, and engaging. It connects with the listener's emotions and values and ultimately inspires action. It's amazing how much of a difference a well-told story can make.
And it doesn't need to be some epic tale or anything. Even a simple anecdote or metaphor can be incredibly powerful if it's told well and connects with the customer's needs.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the psychology of persuasion, we want to leave you with this. Stories are more than just entertainment. They're the key to unlocking understanding, building connections, and influencing decisions.
What stories will you tell? How will you harness the power of storytelling to connect with others and make an impact?
That's something to think about for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep learning and keep exploring.